in a relationship at the time. And so this honestly continues to go on from July to about like September, just more and more business comes. But in my mind, I was like, all right, I've spent, a month already there. And then by this point, from September 2021 to 2022, I spent a month and a half in Paris. And so I was hopeful that, because I've already invested so much, she'll be willing to just wait for me and give me a little more time to handle everything so I can get over there. Because at the same time, I needed to be smart with my money management, because once we would have finished this fiance visa, she would have been in America, she wouldn't have been able to work for the first year. And so, the financial pressure, especially to provide, would have been very high for me. And so I wanted just to make sure that I was doing everything possible to manage my finances so that we would also be good once she would move to America. So we're still having, struggles in the relationship, but we're still, just kind of working through it. And around November, something else happens in our family, and we eventually kind of get into an argument about something else, and she says that she's done with me. She no longer wants to be together. And I said, all right, well, now I really need to get over there because I need to, fix what's going on. I need to salvage the relationship. And so I decided to take a trip there in January. And so before my trip, though, my grandmother, she told me, she said, if you go and something doesn't feel right, just come back. And I was like, all right, Grandma, sure, I'll do that. So when I get to France, I was supposed to be there initially for 2 weeks. But within the first day of me getting there, my body was just so weak and I just felt so sick. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I just was physically down. It was so bad that I ended up leaving in 2 days when my initial trip was supposed to be for 2 weeks. And so at this point, we're basically agreeing that the relationship is not looking like it will last, but let's just take at least another week once I get back to decide what we'll do. So I returned back to America and we decided that we'll end the relationship. And so this was a very devastating moment for me. I went through a couple months of depression. I had to step away from my job. It was just moments where I just didn't know I would break down. I would, a lot of times I would just be driving and crying, and I didn't want to put myself in that position to seem weak to the world. And so I just stepped away from everything. And so now April comes around, we reconnect. I want to say maybe she reached out to me for my birthday. And so we're talking, and around this time she mentioned that she'll be going to Mexico for one of her friends' trips or something like that. And so I was like, oh wow, you're going to Mexico? That's super close to Cali, like I could hop on a flight and I could see you. Let's schedule something and I'll go to Mexico and I'll meet you. But she was like, no, I don't want you to come to Mexico. And I thought it was a little weird, but I was like, no worries. I know it's a lot going on emotionally, and so I'll respect your wishes. And so decided not to go to Mexico. We're still talking to each other.